Have you got an email lately saying that your vendor account is about to be terminated? Here is what you can do to solve that problem. Hey guys, it's Chris Turton here. I'm an Amazon vendor and seller consultant. We work with many different vendors. I've worked with 250 different Amazon sellers and vendors the last 15 years. And if you've been having the emails lately from Amazon saying they're going to terminate your vendor relationship and you've got about 60 days to comply, here are some things you really need to know. And that is, of course, why, the pitfalls of 1P or vendor, and what you can do to overcome this issue for your brand. The first thing to say is, why is this happening? Well, Amazon vendor has been changing a lot in the last few years, and we've seen many vendors moving onto seller or moving into both, which is the hybrid vendor and seller model. The reasons are complicated. Many are to do with pricing and relationships that brands build with vendors. And what we're finding now is that vendors that have turnovers of less than $5 million or £5-6 million are effectively being forced out of that vendor relationship, or they're not having vendor management or category management, and it's become very difficult for them to be, financially competent and profitable on the vendor platform. So this is what you can do. So if you get the closure warning, the very first thing to do is understand that that closure warning is allowing you to go on to seller. They are instructing you to make a new business relationship with Amazon through Seller Central. Now, this is already what many vendors are doing within Europe, but in the US, that has become problematic. Many vendors have not been able to create a seller relationship at the risk of having their accounts closed previously. However, this is effectively an invite for you to go onto Seller Central. We recommend that all vendors in the EU do this anyway, just in case this happens to you in the future or the limits go up. You should have a Seller Central account ready to go, even if you're not going to sell or working with retailers that are going to sell for you if you have a vendor relationship, just to save a lot of these headaches, because the time windows you have between when Amazon are going to close your vendor account are so short. So if you can, and you've already done this within Europe, make sure you create a Seller Central account. If you're in the US, you may find this challenging. If you have a vendor manager or an account manager, you may be able to negotiate these kind of particulars. So just be careful in terms of, if you are a US account, trying to open a seller account, because that may cause you some issues. So ultimately, why this is happening is that vendor has decided that the business model is too expensive for them to operate your products. Either the net profits are too slim, the catalog is not comparable enough for them, and they're not able to get a good cost pricing for you. You may also find on the other side that your cost pricing just does not match with Amazon's own terms. You may also find bigger issues in the bigger retail picture, that vendor is not able to set their pricing competitively with your bigger retail market. So we have to be very careful when we're looking at that with a client and say, what is the best outcome for those clients? So the first thing I'd recommend doing is understanding where your brand fits on Amazon. Now, if Amazon are going to close your account, the first thing you need to do is set up a Seller Central account. So do that straight away, unless, of course, you are a US-based business, which you may find struggle. If you are in the EU or in the UK or any other particular territory, open a Seller Central account today, because this can save you a lot of time in the long run. You'll need to get that verified. You'll need to do all those bits and pieces. What you've got to understand, first of all, is that if Amazon no longer lets you sell on vendor and you have to move your products onto seller, where does that leave you as a business? When you have your products on Amazon vendor or 1P, the product contributions, the content, everything that's been written about your product will get a priority on Amazon vendor. And what that means is, if you create that product again in Seller Central by simply typing in the barcode or the product ASIP and selling that product, you might find that whatever you tell it to update the content might not change, even if you have brand registry. So you need to make sure that you understand that the pitfalls are that Amazon vendor may still, we don't know what's going to happen with these vendor closures yet. Vendor may still have the retail contribution, the content contributions for your products. And that may happen when you create a seller account. So just bear that in mind. If that does happen, you need to talk to a specialist like ourselves. We might be able to help negotiate and work with Amazon to get those changes put through. But at the moment, we don't know what's going to happen with these vendor closures, because at the moment, vendor still takes the main retail contribution for your products. So that's a really crucial thing to understand, because it may be that when you have a new Amazon Seller Central account, you are unable to make changes to your content because vendor still has the ultimate say. The next thing to do is to make sure your brand registry account is correct and has your brands in it. So if you are a historical vendor account, you've been on Amazon Vendor for many years, you may find that you don't have the new brand registry 2.0. And what I mean by that is if you go to brandregistry.amazon.com or whatever location you're in, so if you're in the UK, it would be brandregistry.amazon.co.uk, that you have all your brands set up in there. You'll need that by getting your trademarks from the trademark offices, following those applications and making sure they're connected. Now, most modern Amazon vendor accounts have this, but if you've been on vendor for a long time, it may not be fully updated. You need to make sure you have brand registry, because what you want to do, you need to go into brand registry once you've got your brands and your trademarks connected. Make sure they are connected to your Seller Central accounts, because you need to still say to Amazon, you are the owners of those trademarks. So vitally, make sure you have brand registry as your very first point for all the brands that you choose to work with, and they are connected into your Seller Central account. When we talk about the catalog, which is the next point, and we talk about the retail contributions issue, right now, the thing you want to do is download your catalog. You can download your catalog from Amazon Vendor. Make sure you get all the product information you can, the barcodes, the ASINs, all the information you can, and make sure they are ported into Seller Central and you have a database of those products, because you want to make sure that you've covered all bases in terms of the products. So you know that you've got a like-for-like comparison of all your catalog in Seller Central and your catalog within Vendor Central. The next point is to make sure you understand what works best in both markets. So if you're Amazon vendor, you will know that your terms are unique. What you pay Amazon is unique to you, what's been negotiated, what the terms are that get brought across from Amazon, where on Amazon Seller Central, they are set based on category and other factors. So you need to understand the full profitability. And the first thing you always tell everyone is make sure you understand your profitability, whether it's on vendor or seller. This gives you the next step that means that ASIN by ASIN, you can work out whether or not those products are going to be profitable putting onto seller or going through all your resellers, or if it's just not worth putting on Amazon at all through Amazon Seller Central. So understanding the net profitability of your products in comparison, because it may be that Amazon vendor, they are profitable and they work for you. On Amazon seller, they just might not be. Again, you've got to do the costing analysis of this, especially if you've had a product previously that sold really, really well. So make sure you understand line by line is the answer. Go through every ASIN and make sure you understand the profitability of each product and how it's sold, whether it's going to be through FBA or through different, through its FBM, whether it's going to be in cartons, however it's going to be sold, whether or not it's no longer viable. If you've got very small retail products, really tiny little products, you might find they're completely unviable to do on Seller Central. You might have to start creating bundles or packs for them. There's many different scenarios, and every client we've dealt with in this scenario has had to deal with it very differently. The next thing to understand is to make sure that you get the pricing structure correct, because what we found is if you are finding that Amazon vendor have been underpaying you and their retail price, which is algorithmically set, is too low and you have to make a higher price, you have to be very mindful of the pricing that is set, because if you try and set your price too high, you'll get Amazon's pricing errors. There's so many different complexities within the pricing algorithms of Amazon. You need to make sure that you can compete. Again, that may mean that the product is not viable for sale on Amazon. Don't get stuck into the idea of selling for the sake of selling, because it's a waste of time and money. You want to make sure that it's profitable. So make sure that you understand that process end to end. In terms of tying things up, make sure that if you do have any vendor managers, any catalog managers, anyone within Amazon that you've worked with, that you are still in tune with them. That's really important, because you may still be able to salvage the account. You may still salvage something from the catalog process or the fulfillment process. Another really key one is the logistics implications. So another thing that we get told all the time from clients that move from vendor to seller, or businesses that are just selling to really big retailers, is they're not set up to sell on Amazon FBA. They're not set up to sell cartons. That is something that you'll have to look into with either a 3PL or logistics firm, or indeed new warehousing processes yourself. This is something that we can help with internally, and we've had to do for a few major brands before, because of their process being very different in terms of how they work and how they operate their entire catalog process. So, and finally, the next thing is your advertising. So advertising is really, really important to understand on Amazon vendor and seller, because the advertising account on vendor is very different. It's a separate entity. So if you're doing successful advertising already on Amazon Vendor, you will need to make a new account onto Amazon Seller. And remember, they are not the same thing. They don't operate in the same way because you won't have that history. So you need to make sure that you are able to export your campaigns from your ad groups, and you'll need to rebuild them. And like I said, you'll lose your history, so this will be very fresh and new. If you've got really good working advertising campaigns, you'll need to restructure and rebuild them on Seller if you choose to use the same ASINs. So just be very mindful of that. Your advertising will stop. You'll need to turn that off on Amazon Vendor and reset it up on Seller. And you may get to find an expert that can help you reframe and redevelop your catalog. The more you can export from your vendor account, key tip here, the more you can export from your vendor account, the more money it will save you, because you'll be able to get as much data as possible from history you might have accumulated over years. So really important there to understand. This is really, really touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of Amazon Vendor, Amazon Seller, the hybrid model, the moving across. So if you need more advice and guidance, drop us a message. Happy to give you a free consultancy to talk about more about what we can do in terms of helping you make that move, especially if you had this termination notice from Amazon Vendor. And if you want more information, a special Amazon Vendor, have a look up here for another video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.